Titi arrived at her brother's house in their hometown, feeling both excited and nervous. It had been years since she had seen her brother Ayo, and she couldn't wait to catch up with him. Ayo opened the door and they hugged tightly. "It's so good to see you," he exclaimed, a big smile on his face. "Same here," Titi replied, beaming back at him. "So, tell me about this new friend of yours, Kunle. He's a great guy. We've been best friends since we started university. You're going to love him," Ayo said, leading Titi inside. As they entered the living room, Titi felt a mix of excitement and curiosity. She had heard so many stories about Kunle from Ayo, and she was eager to meet him. Kunle was lounging on the couch, watching a football match when they walked in. He stood up to greet them. "Hi, I'm Kunle," he said, extending his hand. "Titi," she replied, shaking his hand. The moment their eyes met, Titi felt a spark of connection. As the days passed, Titi and Kunle spent more and more time together. They explored the lush fields, played football with Ayo and their friends, and watched movies late into the night. They talked about everything from their favorite Nigerian dishes to their dreams for the future. One sunny afternoon, as they were relaxing by the river, Kunle turned to Titi and said, "You know, I've been wanting to tell you something for a while now." Titi's heart raced. "What is it?" "I think you're amazing, Titi. I've never met anyone quite like you," Kunle confessed, his voice sincere. Titi felt butterflies in her stomach. "I feel the same way about you, Kunle," she replied, looking into his eyes. They leaned in to kiss, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But then Ayo's voice interrupted them. "Titi, can I talk to you for a minute?" he called out, looking serious. "Sure," Titi replied, her heart sinking a little. Ayo led Titi to a quiet spot under a big mango tree. "What's going on, Titi?" he asked, concern in his eyes. "I don't know how to say this, but I'm worried about you and Kunle," Ayo said. "He's my best friend, and I don't want anything to come between us." "But we have feelings for each other, Ayo." "I can't just ignore that," Titi replied, feeling frustrated. "I know, but I just think you should think about what you really want," Ayo said gently, putting his arm around her. Titi understood where Ayo was coming from, but she felt torn between her feelings for Kunle and her loyalty to her brother. As summer drew to a close, Titi struggled with a decision. Should she pursue her feelings for Kunle and risk losing Ayo's friendship? Or should she end things with Kunle to keep the peace? On the last day of her visit, Titi and Kunle took a long walk by the river. They talked about their future and the idea of a long-distance relationship. "I want to be with you, Titi, more than anything," Kunle said, looking at her with hope in his eyes. "I want to be with you too, Kunle, but I don't know how we can make it work," Titi replied, feeling tears welling up. They hugged tightly, both knowing their time together was ending. As they walked back to the house, Titi knew she had to make a choice. She couldn't keep Kunle hanging on, and she didn't want to lose Ayo. Once they got back, Titi pulled Kunle aside. "We need to talk," she said, taking a deep breath. "What's wrong?" Kunle asked, looking concerned. "I can't do this, Kunle. I can't risk losing my brother's friendship." "I'm really sorry," Titi said, tears streaming down her face. Kunle looked pained but understood. "I get it," he said, hugging her tightly. As Titi prepared to leave, sadness washed over her. She had fallen in love with her brother's best friend, but she felt it was the right thing to do. As she drove away, she thought about Ayo's words. Maybe this was for the best? Maybe she and Kunle were never meant to be together. But as she looked back at the house in her rearview mirror, she couldn't shake the feeling of longing. Maybe one day, things would change. Maybe she and Kunle would find their way back to each other. But for now, she had to let him go. A few days after returning home, Titi received a call from Kunle. "Hey, Titi, how are you doing?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "I'm okay, how about you?" she replied, feeling a lump in her throat. "I'm good. Look, I know things didn't work out how we wanted, but I just wanted to say I'm glad we met," Kunle said softly. "Me too, Kunle. I'll never forget this summer," Titi replied, a tear rolling down her cheek. They chatted for a bit longer before saying goodbye. Titi felt a sense of closure wash over her. She knew she made the right choice, but sadness lingered. Over the next few weeks, Titi focused on her work, trying to stay busy. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget Kunle. He had left a mark on her heart. and she knew she would always love him. One day, as she walked home from work, she spotted a familiar figure outside her apartment building. It was Kunle. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her heart racing. "I couldn't stop thinking about you, Titi. I had to see you," he said, stepping closer. Titi felt a rush of emotions flood through her. She wanted to be with Kunle more than anything, but it was complicated. "I don't know, Kunle. It's complicated," she said, feeling tears welling up again. "I know, but I can't help how I feel about you," he said, gently taking her hand. Titi looked at him, her heart fluttering. She knew this was a risk, but she couldn't ignore her feelings any longer. "Okay," she said, smiling through her tears. Kunle pulled her into his arms, and they kissed, their lips meeting in a passionate embrace. As they broke apart, Titi knew they had a long road ahead of them, but she also knew they would face it together. When you find love, you hold on to it with everything you've got. That's exactly what Titi and Kunle were going to do. As their relationship blossomed, they knew they had to tell Ayo about their feelings. It was a conversation they had been dreading, but they knew it was necessary. One evening, they sat down with Ayo and shared the truth. At first, he was surprised, but as he saw the love in their eyes, he began to understand. "I can't say I'm thrilled about this, but if you two are happy, that's what matters," Ayo said, smiling at his sister and best friend. Titi and Kunle felt a wave of relief wash over them. They knew they had Ayo's blessing, and that meant everything. In the following months, Titi and Kunle's relationship grew stronger. They went on romantic dates, shared their hopes and dreams, and supported each other through thick and thin. And through it all, they knew they were meant to be together. Sometimes love doesn't come in a neat package. Sometimes it blossoms between a brother's best friend and his sister. But when you find that love, you hold on tight, because it's worth everything. And that's exactly what Titi and Kunle did. They held on to each other with all their might, knowing that their love was worth fighting for.